The sound of sobbing carried across the Texas plains like a wounded animal's cry, and Vincent Crawford heard it clear as a church bell on a Sunday morning, even before he spotted the woman crumpled beside the broken wagon wheel. The year was 1878, and Tascosa was 3 miles behind him, but something about those heartbroken sobs made him pull his horse to a stop and dismount before his mind could talk him out of it. She sat in the dust with her face buried in her hands, dark hair spilling free from what had once been a neat bun, her shoulders shaking with the kind of grief that comes from somewhere deep and inconsolable. Vincent approached slowly, his boots crunching on the dry earth, not wanting to startle her. When he was close enough to speak without shouting, he cleared his throat gently. She jerked her head up, revealing eyes the color of storm clouds, red-rimmed and wet with tears. Dirt streaked her cheeks, and her traveling dress was torn at the hem. She looked to be in her early 20s, perhaps 23 or 24, with delicate features that were currently twisted in anguish. "Madam," he said softly, crouching down to her level, "are you hurt?" She stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether he was real or some heat-induced mirage. Then fresh tears spilled down her cheeks and she shook her head. "Everything is ruined," she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "Everything." Vincent took off his hat and set it on his knee, studying her face. He was 26 years old, weathered by years of working cattle drives and ranch work, but he had never quite managed to harden his heart the way some men did. Something about this woman's tears reached right into his chest and squeezed. "Your tears are mine to dry now," he said quietly, surprising himself with the words. He pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her. She took it with trembling fingers, pressing it to her face. "You do not even know me," she said between sobs. "You do not know what I have done." "Then tell me," Vincent said, "starting with your name if you would." "Natalie," she said after a moment. "Natalie Griffin. I came from Kansas City to marry a man named Thomas Brennan. We were engaged by correspondence, and he sent money for my passage. But when I arrived in Tascosa yesterday, I discovered he married someone else 3 weeks ago. The woman at the boarding house told me. He did not even have the decency to send word." Vincent felt anger flare in his chest. "That is a low thing to do to any woman, especially one who traveled so far." "It gets worse," Natalie said, wiping at her eyes. "I spent almost all my remaining money on renting this wagon and horse to travel to the next town where I have a distant cousin. I thought perhaps she would take me in until I could find work. But this morning the wheel broke and the horse ran off when I tried to fix it. I have been sitting here for hours, and I realized I have nowhere to go. No money, no family here, no prospects. I left everything behind in Kansas City. My sister begged me not to come, but I was so certain this was my chance for a new life." Vincent looked at the damaged wagon wheel, then back at Natalie. The sun was climbing higher, and the heat would only get worse. "This wheel cannot be fixed without proper tools and a replacement spoke." "How long have you been out here without water?" "Since dawn," she admitted. "I drank the last of what I had around midday." He stood and walked to his horse, retrieving his canteen. "Drink," he said, kneeling beside her again and pressing it into her hands. "Slowly, though. You will make yourself sick otherwise." Natalie drank gratefully, and some color returned to her pale cheeks. "Thank you," she said. "You are very kind to a stranger. What were you planning to do? Just sit here until the buzzards came calling?" Vincent tried to keep his tone light, but concern threaded through his words. "I did not know what else to do," Natalie said, and fresh tears threatened to spill. "I prayed someone would come along, but when I saw you, I realized I had no right to ask for help. I have no way to repay kindness." Vincent settled himself in the dirt beside her, his long legs stretched out in front of him. Let me tell you something my mother used to say before she passed. She said that kindness is not a loan expecting repayment. It is a gift freely given. And right now you need help, so I am going to give it. But what can you possibly do? Natalie asked, looking at him with those storm cloud eyes. I have no prospects, no place to go. Even if you brought me back to Tascosa, I cannot afford another night at the boarding house. And I will not become the kind of woman who survives by selling herself. I would rather starve. You will not starve, and you will not have to sell anything but your labor if you are willing to work, Vincent said. He made a decision in that moment that would change both their lives, though he did not yet know it. I work on the Crawford Ranch. It is my family's land about 10 miles north of Tascosa. My father passed 2 years ago, and it is just me and my younger brother now. We have been needing help with the house. Someone to cook and clean, mend clothes, tend the vegetable garden. The work is honest, and we would pay fair wages plus room and board. Natalie stared at him. You would hire me, just like that. You do not know anything about me. I know you are a woman in trouble through no fault of your own. I know that scoundrel Brennan wronged you, and I know you are honest enough to admit your situation rather than trying to deceive me for help. That is enough for me. Vincent stood and offered her his hand. What do you say, Miss Griffin? Will you give ranch life a try? She looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment, then placed her smaller hand in his and let him pull her to her feet. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I will, thank you, Mr. Crawford. Vincent, he corrected. If we are going to be living under the same roof, we should skip the formalities. Then you must call me Natalie, she said, and for the first time, a small smile flickered across her face. Vincent helped her gather the few belongings she had in the wagon. A carpet bag with clothes, a few books, a daguerreotype of a stern-looking couple who must have been her parents, and a bundle of letters tied with string. The letters from Thomas Brennan, he assumed, full of lies and false promises. He secured everything to his horse, then helped Natalie mount. She sat side saddle, and he swung up behind her, his arms coming around her to hold the reins. I apologize for the proximity, he said. It is not proper, I know, but we have 10 miles to cover. Given that I have been sitting in the dirt crying for half the day, I think propriety is the least of my concerns right now, Natalie said, and Vincent felt rather than saw her smile. They rode at an easy pace to spare the horse the burden of carrying double. The Texas landscape stretched out around them, all brown grass and blue sky, with the occasional scrub brush breaking up the monotony. Vincent had grown up with this view, but he wondered what Natalie thought of it. Kansas City was a proper city with buildings and streets and civilization. This was wild country, beautiful in its own way but harsh and unforgiving. Tell me about your brother, Natalie said after they had ridden in silence for a while. What is he like? Victor is 23, and he is as different from me as night from day, Vincent said. I am the serious one who worries about the cattle and the ranch accounts. Victor is the charmer who can talk a rattlesnake out of its venom. He will like you, I am sure of it. He has been complaining about eating my cooking for 2 years now. Is your cooking truly that bad? Natalie asked, and he could hear the amusement in her voice. I can keep us from starving, but I cannot make anything taste good while doing it, Vincent admitted. My mother tried to teach me, but I never had the patience for it. I would rather be working with the horses. I love to cook, Natalie said softly. My mother taught me before she died. It was one of the few things we did together that did not end in argument. She wanted me to be more like my sister, quiet and obedient and content to stay home. I always wanted more. I suppose that is why I was foolish enough to accept a proposal from a man I had never met. It was not foolish to hope for a better life, Vincent said. That man was a coward for not being honest with you. That is on him, not you." They continued riding, and Vincent found himself acutely aware of Natalie's presence in front of him. She smelled like lavender despite the dust and the heat, and when the horse shifted, she leaned back slightly against his chest. It had been a long time since he had been this close to a woman. Ranch life did not leave much time for courting, and the women in Tascosa had never particularly interested him. They all seemed to be looking for a man with more money or more charm than he possessed, but Natalie was different. There was a strength in her despite the tears he had witnessed, a determination that spoke of someone who would not break easily. He admired that, even though they had only just met. The Crawford ranch came into view as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. It was not the largest spread in Texas, but it was respectable. The house was 2 stories, built from sturdy timber hauled all the way from East Texas, with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. There was a barn, a bunkhouse that stood empty since they could not afford to hire hands, a chicken coop, and several corrals. Cattle grazed in the distance, their forms dark against the golden grass. "It is beautiful," Natalie said, and Vincent heard genuine appreciation in her voice. "It is home," Vincent said simply. "My father built this house with his own hands with help from my mother and whatever neighbors would lend their time. It took 3 years, but he was proud of it until the day he died." They rode up to the house, and before Vincent could dismount, the front door burst open and Victor came running out. He was tall like Vincent but leaner, with darker hair and an easy smile that he turned on Natalie immediately. "Well, well," Victor said, his eyebrows rising. "Who is this lovely lady you have brought home, brother?" "This is Miss Natalie Griffin," Vincent said, dismounting and then helping Natalie down. Her legs were unsteady after the long ride, and he kept a steadying hand on her elbow. "She is going to be working for us. Cooking, cleaning, and whatever else needs doing around the house. Natalie, this is my brother Victor." Victor swept off his hat and gave a theatrical bow. "Delighted to make your acquaintance, Miss Griffin. Please tell me you can cook better than this old bear, or I might weep with joy right here." Natalie smiled, though Vincent could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "I can cook, Mr. Crawford. Whether I am better than your brother remains to be seen, but I promise to do my best. Please call me Victor. And I already like you better than Vincent, no offense to present company." Victor shot his brother a grin. "Come inside. You look like you could use a rest and a proper meal. We have stew left from last night, and it is only a little bit terrible." Vincent carried Natalie's carpet bag while Victor led them into the house. The interior was neat, but clearly lacking a woman's touch. The furniture was practical rather than pretty, and dust had accumulated in the corners. The kitchen was clean enough, but the dishes were stacked haphazardly, and the curtains were in need of washing. Natalie looked around and said nothing, but Vincent could see her taking mental inventory. He wondered what she thought, coming from a city to this rough bachelor household. "I will show you to your room," Vincent said. "It was our mother's sewing room, but we moved a bed in there after she passed. It is small but private, with a good window for light and air." He led her upstairs to a room at the end of the hall. It was indeed small, with just enough space for a narrow bed, a dresser, and a washstand. But the window looked out over the eastern fields, and the morning sun would fill it with light. Someone, probably Victor, had made an attempt to make it welcoming. There was a quilt on the bed and a vase on the dresser, though it held no flowers. "It is perfect," Natalie said softly, setting her hand on the dresser. "Thank you, Vincent, for everything. I know this is unusual, hiring someone you just met. I promise I will work hard to prove myself worth your trust." "I am not worried about that," Vincent said. He stood in the doorway, suddenly aware of the intimacy of being alone with her in a bedroom, even an empty one. "Rest a while. I will call you when supper is ready." He left her there and went downstairs to find Victor waiting with his arms crossed and a knowing look on his face. "So," Victor said, "want to tell me the real story of how you found our new housekeeper?" Vincent sighed and went to the kitchen to check on the stew. "I found her crying by the side of the road. Her wagon broke down and she had nowhere to go. Her intended married someone else while she was traveling here to meet him." "Thomas Brennan," Victor said, his face darkening. "I heard about that. He married the widow Palmer. Everyone in town was talking about how he left some girl waiting." "That girl is upstairs in our house now," Vincent said. "And she is a good woman who got a raw deal. She needs work and we need help. It makes sense." "It makes sense. Or you felt something when you saw her crying?" Victor asked shrewdly. "Because I saw the way you looked at her just now, brother." "I just met her a few hours ago," Vincent protested. "I barely know her." "You can know someone for years and never really see them," Victor said, leaning against the kitchen table. "Or you can meet someone and know in an instant that they are going to matter. I have seen that look before." "It is how Pa looked at Ma." Vincent stirred the stew more vigorously than necessary. "You are reading too much into it. She is an employee, nothing more." "If you say so," Victor said, but his tone suggested he did not believe it for a second. "Well, employee or not, she is already an improvement. At least we will eat decent food now." They ate supper together that night, the three of them around the kitchen table. Natalie had changed into a fresh dress, though it was nearly as worn as the first, and had pinned her hair back up. The crying had left her eyes slightly puffy, but she held herself with dignity as she tasted the stew. "It is not bad," she said diplomatically. "Perhaps a bit more salt and some herbs if you have them growing. I noticed wild onions near the creek when we rode in." "See," Victor said to Vincent. "Already making improvements." They talked through the meal, safe topics like the ranch and the cattle and what needed doing. Natalie asked questions that showed she was sharp and quick to understand. She had never lived on a ranch before, but she was willing to learn. Vincent found himself watching the way the lamplight played across her features, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking. After supper, Natalie insisted on washing the dishes despite Vincent's protests that she should rest. "I need to start earning my keep," she said firmly. "I have been useless all day, sitting and crying. Let me do this." The brothers left her to it and went out to the porch to smoke. The night was cool, the stars brilliant overhead. Victor was quiet for a long time before he spoke. "She is in pain," he said, "not just from what happened with Brennan. There is something deeper there." "I know," Vincent said, "but she will tell us if she wants to. Everyone is entitled to their secrets." "Just be careful," Victor said. "I can see you are already half in love with her, and she is not in a place to love anyone back right now. Her heart is bruised." "I am not in love with her," Vincent said, but even as he said it, he knew it was not entirely true. There was something about Natalie that had reached past his defenses from the moment he heard her crying. He wanted to protect her, to make her smile, to take away the pain in her eyes. Maybe that was not love yet, but it was something. Inside, Natalie stood at the sink, her hands in the warm dishwater, and let herself cry quietly. She had held herself together through supper, making polite conversation and pretending everything was fine. But now, alone in this strange house, the reality of her situation crashed over her again. She was alone in Texas, living with two men she did not know, with no money and no way to leave even if she wanted to. But beneath the fear and the grief was something else. Gratitude. Vincent had shown her kindness when he had no obligation to do so. He had not looked at her with pity or disdain. He had simply offered help, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And when he had said those words, "Your tears are mine to dry now," something had shifted in her chest. It was as if he had given her permission to be broken, at least for a little while. She finished the dishes and dried her hands on her apron, looking around the kitchen. Tomorrow she would start properly. She would prove to the Crawford brothers that hiring her had not been a mistake. And maybe, in time, she would prove to herself that coming to Texas had not been the worst decision of her life. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Natalie rose before dawn to start breakfast. She learned that Vincent liked his coffee strong and black, while Victor preferred his with sugar. She learned that Vincent was quiet in the mornings, needing time to wake fully before he could engage in conversation, while Victor could talk the ear off a cornstalk from the moment he opened his eyes. She cooked hearty meals of biscuits and gravy, bacon and eggs, and the brothers ate with appreciation that warmed her more than she expected. After breakfast, the men would head out to work the ranch. Sometimes they were gone all day, checking on cattle or mending fences. Other times they worked closer to home, in the barn or the corrals. Natalie spent her days cleaning the house from top to bottom, washing curtains and beating rugs, scrubbing floors and polishing furniture. She attacked the work with fierce determination, as if she could wash away her own pain along with the dust and dirt. She discovered a vegetable garden behind the house that had been neglected. The weeds had taken over, but beneath them, she found tomatoes and beans struggling to survive. She spent an afternoon on her knees in the dirt, pulling weeds and watering the plants, and felt a small measure of peace in the simple work. In the evenings, they ate together. Natalie's cooking improved as she learned what supplies they had and what she could make. She baked bread that filled the house with warmth and comfort. She made stews and roasts, pies with dried fruit, and biscuits so light they practically floated off the plate. The brothers praised her cooking lavishly, and she found herself smiling more often. Vincent, she learned, was a man of few words but deep feeling. He noticed everything, from when she needed help reaching something on a high shelf to when she was having a difficult day. He would leave wildflowers on the kitchen table, or bring her fresh vegetables from a neighbor's garden, or simply sit on the porch with her in the evening and let the silence be comfortable between them. Victor was warmer, more openly affectionate in a brotherly way. He told jokes and stories, flirted harmlessly, and made her laugh. He was easier to know, his emotions written plainly on his face. But Vincent was the one who occupied her thoughts when she lay in bed at night, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of the ranch settling around her. 3 weeks after Natalie's arrival, a storm rolled in from the west. The sky turned dark green and the wind picked up, howling around the house. Vincent and Victor worked to get the horses into the barn and secure anything that might blow away. Natalie stood at the kitchen window, watching the lightning split the sky, feeling nervous energy course through her. She had always been afraid of storms. When she was a child, her father had been killed by lightning while working in the fields. Her mother had never been the same after, and Natalie had grown up with a terror of thunder and wind. Now, as the storm broke over the ranch, she felt her heart racing and her hands shaking. The door burst open and Vincent came in, soaked through from the rain. "It is a bad one," he said, pushing his wet hair back from his face. "Victor is staying in the barn with the horses to keep them calm. I wanted to make sure you were all right." "I am fine," Natalie said, but her voice shook, betraying her. Vincent looked at her more closely, seeing the fear in her eyes. "You are afraid of storms." It was not a question. Natalie nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. "My father died in a storm. I know it is foolish, but I cannot help it." Without a word, Vincent crossed the kitchen and took her hand. "Come sit in the parlor," he said. "It is more comfortable and you will not be alone." They sat on the old sofa and Vincent kept hold of her hand, Each time the thunder crashed, Natalie flinched and Vincent squeezed her hand gently. "It is all right," he said quietly. "The house has weathered storms worse than this. We are safe here." "You do not have to stay with me," Natalie said. "I know you have work to do." "There is nothing more important right now than making sure you are not afraid," Vincent said, and the simple sincerity in his voice made Natalie's throat tight with emotion. They sat together through the worst of the storm. Vincent talked to distract her, telling her stories about growing up on the ranch, about his parents and the early days when Texas was even wilder than it was now. He told her about the first time he had ridden a horse alone, at age 5, and how his mother had been furious and his father proud. He told her about the time Victor had gotten treed by a wild pig and had to wait 3 hours until someone came to rescue him. Natalie found herself laughing despite her fear, drawn into the warmth of his memories. And somewhere during that storm, as lightning flashed and thunder rolled, she realized that she was falling in love with Vincent Crawford. It was not the desperate infatuation she had felt for Thomas Brennan, built on letters and fantasies. This was something deeper and truer, built on kindness and quiet moments and the feeling of his hand holding hers. The realization terrified her almost as much as the storm. She could not afford to fall in love, not now. She was still too broken, too uncertain of her place in the world. But the heart did not ask permission, she realized. It simply felt what it felt when the storm finally passed. Leaving the world washed clean and smelling of rain, Vincent released her hand and stood. "I should check on Victor and the horses," he said. "Will you be all right now?" "Yes," Natalie said. "Thank you, Vincent, for staying with me." He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes. "Any time," he said softly, and then he was gone. Victor came in a few minutes later, mud-splattered and grinning. "Well, that was exciting," he said. "The horses were nearly as scared as you looked. Everything secure in here?" "Everything is fine," Natalie said, standing and smoothing her skirt. "I will heat up some coffee. You both must be cold." As she worked in the kitchen, Natalie felt Victor watching her. Finally, he spoke. "My brother is in love with you, you know." Natalie nearly dropped the coffee pot. "What? No, he is just being kind." "Vincent is always kind," Victor said. "But he does not look at everyone the way he looks at you. I have known him my whole life, and I have never seen him like this." "You have gotten under his skin." "Even if that were true, it does not matter," Natalie said, busying herself with the coffee to avoid meeting his eyes. "I am here to work, nothing more. I cannot afford to complicate things." "Love always complicates things," Victor said, "but it is worth it." "And for what it is worth, I think you feel the same way about him." "Victor, please," Natalie said, and there was enough distress in her voice that he dropped the subject. But his words haunted her for days afterward. She found herself watching Vincent more, noticing the little things. The way he always made sure she had the best piece of meat at dinner. The way he fixed things around the house without being asked, noticing what needed repair. The way his eyes softened when he looked at her, as if she were something precious and fragile, and she noticed her own responses. How her heart lifted when she heard his step on the porch. How she took extra care with her appearance on days when he would be working close to the house. How she found excuses to be near him, to talk to him, to hear his low voice and see his rare smile. A month became 2, and summer settled over the Texas plains like a heavy blanket. The days were long and hot, the work endless. But Natalie had never been happier. The ranch felt like home now. She had her routines, her place in the household. The brothers treated her with respect and genuine affection. She felt valued in a way she never had before. One evening in early August, Vincent asked if she would like to go for a ride. "There is something I want to show you," he said, "if you are not too tired." Natalie agreed, and they rode out together as the sun began to set. Vincent led her to a place where the land rose slightly, giving a view of the ranch and the plains beyond. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and purple, breathtaking in its beauty. "This was my father's favorite spot," Vincent said as they dismounted. "He used to come here when he needed to think. After he died, I would come here and talk to him. I know it is foolish, but it made me feel less alone." "It is not foolish," Natalie said softly. "I talk to my mother sometimes too. I tell her things I never got to say when she was alive." They stood side by side, watching the sunset. Vincent was quiet for a long time before he spoke again. "Natalie, I need to tell you something, and I hope it will not make things uncomfortable between us." Her heart began to pound. "What is it?" "I have feelings for you," Vincent said, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "I know it is not appropriate, given that you work for me. I know you came here running from a broken heart, and the last thing you probably want is another man complicating your life. But I cannot keep pretending that I see you as just an employee. I think about you constantly. I worry about you. I want to make you happy. I want to protect you from anything that might hurt you, and I thought you should know, even if nothing can come of it." Natalie felt tears prick her eyes, but for once they were not tears of sadness. "Vincent, look at me." He turned to face her, and she saw vulnerability in his expression that took her breath away. "I have feelings for you too," she said. "I have been trying not to because I was afraid. Afraid of being hurt again, afraid of being foolish again. But what I feel for you is nothing like what I thought I felt for Thomas. This is real. You are real, and I do not want to pretend anymore either." Vincent reached out slowly as if giving her time to pull away and cupped her face in his rough hands. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes," Natalie whispered. He kissed her gently, tentatively at first and then with growing passion as she responded. Natalie felt as if she were falling and flying at the same time. His arms came around her, strong and sure, and she leaned into him, letting herself trust in this moment, in this man, in this feeling that was so much bigger than fear. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I want to court you properly," he said. "I want to do this right. You deserve that." "We live in the same house," Natalie said with a shaky laugh. "How do we court properly?" "We will figure it out," Vincent said. "But I promise you this, Natalie. I will never lie to you, never deceive you, never treat your heart carelessly. You are too precious to me." They rode back to the ranch holding hands, and Natalie felt as if the world had shifted on its axis. Everything looked different now, brighter and more hopeful. When they arrived home, Victor took one look at their faces and grinned. "Well, it is about time," he said. "I was beginning to think I would have to lock you two in a room together." "Behave yourself," Vincent said, but there was no heat in it. He could not stop smiling. The next weeks were some of the happiest of Natalie's life. Vincent courted her with old-fashioned determination. He brought her gifts, small things like ribbons for her hair or sweets from Tascosa when he went to town. He carved her a box for her keepsakes, the wood smooth and perfectly fitted. He taught her to ride better, patient and encouraging when she was nervous. They took walks in the evening, talking about everything and nothing. Vincent told her about his dreams for the ranch, his hopes for the future. Natalie told him about her childhood, about her complicated relationship with her mother, about the sister she missed. They learned each other's histories, each other's fears and hopes and dreams, and they stole kisses whenever they could. Behind the barn where Victor could not see, in the kitchen when he was out, on the porch late at night when the stars were out and the world was quiet. Each kiss felt like a promise, like a small piece of healing, but their happiness was not without complications. Word had gotten around Tascosa that Vincent Crawford had hired the woman Thomas Brennan had jilted. When Vincent went to town for supplies, he heard the whispers and saw the speculative looks. Some people thought it scandalous that an unmarried woman was living with two bachelors. Others thought Vincent was a fool for taking in damaged goods. He ignored it as much as he could, but one afternoon, Thomas Brennan himself approached Vincent outside the general store. "Crawford," Brennan said. He was a soft-looking man with thinning hair and a weak chin. "I heard you took in Miss Griffin." "That is none of your concern," Vincent said coldly. "I feel I should warn you," Brennan said. "She is a difficult woman, too independent, too opinionated. That is why I decided to marry Mrs. Palmer instead. Miss Griffin would never have made a good wife." Vincent felt rage surge through him, hot and fierce. He grabbed Brennan by the front of his shirt and slammed him against the wall. "You listen to me, and you listen well," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Natalie is worth 10 of you. She is smart and strong and kind, and the only mistake she ever made was wasting her time on a coward like you. If I ever hear you speak ill of her again, I will make you regret it. Do you understand?" Brennan nodded frantically, his face pale. Vincent released him and stepped back, his hands shaking with the effort of not hitting the man. "Stay away from her," Vincent said. "Stay away from my ranch, and consider yourself lucky I am letting you walk away." He loaded his supplies into the wagon and drove back to the ranch, still seething. When he arrived, Natalie was in the garden, her skirt tied up in dirt on her hands. She looked up and smiled when she saw him, but the smile faded when she saw his expression. "What happened?" she asked, standing and walking over to him. Vincent told her about the encounter with Brennan, watching her face as he spoke. He expected anger or tears, but instead Natalie started to laugh. "What is funny?" Vincent asked, confused. "You defended my honor," Natalie said, her eyes sparkling. "Like a knight from one of those stories my mother used to read." "Oh, Vincent, you did not have to do that, but I love that you did." "He had no right to speak about you that way," Vincent said. "You are not difficult or opinionated, you are perfect." "I am definitely opinionated," Natalie said, reaching up to touch his face. "And sometimes I am difficult, but I am glad you think I am perfect anyway." "I love you," Vincent said, the words coming out before he could stop them. "I know it is too soon. I know we have only known each other a few months, but I love you, Natalie. I think I have loved you since I found you crying by that broken wagon." Natalie felt tears spill over, but they were happy tears this time. "I love you too," she said. "I love you so much it terrifies me." Vincent pulled her into his arms, not caring that she was dirty from the garden, not caring that Victor was probably watching from the barn. He held her close and felt something settle in his chest, a rightness he had never experienced before. That night after supper, Vincent asked Natalie to come out to the porch. Victor made himself scarce, disappearing into his room with a knowing smile. The night was clear and cool, a relief after the heat of the day. Vincent took Natalie's hands in his, suddenly nervous. "I have been thinking," he said, "about the future, about what I want, and what I want is you. I want you beside me for the rest of my life. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are here. I want to build a life with you, raise a family with you, grow old with you." Natalie's breath caught. "Vincent, what are you saying?" He dropped to one knee and Natalie gasped. "I am saying that I want to marry you, Natalie Griffin. I do not have a ring yet. I want to take you to Tascosa and let you pick one out yourself. But I could not wait another day to ask, will you marry me? Will you be my wife?" "Yes," Natalie said, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, yes, yes, I will marry you, Vincent Crawford." They kissed under the stars, and inside the house, Victor whooped with joy. The next weeks were a flurry of preparation. They set the wedding date for the end of September, giving them time to make arrangements. Natalie sewed herself a new dress, white cotton with lace she splurged on from the general store. Vincent cleaned up the master bedroom, the room his parents had shared, and made it ready for them. They rode into Tascosa together to buy a ring. Natalie chose a simple gold band with a small diamond, modest but beautiful. Vincent also bought her a new dress for everyday wear, dark blue calico that brought out her eyes. She protested the extravagance, but he insisted. "You deserve beautiful things," he said. "Let me give them to you." Word of their engagement spread through Tascosa. Some people were happy for them. Others were still scandalized. Natalie found that she did not care. She had Vincent's love, Victor's friendship, and a home where she belonged. What anyone else thought did not matter. The wedding was held at the ranch on a beautiful September afternoon. The sky was clear and blue, and the heat had finally broken. A minister from Tascosa performed the ceremony in the parlor, with Victor standing up as best man and the wife of a neighboring rancher standing with Natalie. They exchanged vows in front of a small gathering of friends and neighbors, and when Vincent kissed her as his wife, Natalie felt her heart overflow with happiness. They held a celebration afterward, with food and music and dancing. Victor played the fiddle, and the neighbors brought instruments. They danced in the yard as the sun set, and Natalie laughed more than she had in years. This was her family now, these people. This was her home. That night, after the guests had left and Victor had tactfully taken himself off to the bunkhouse, Vincent carried Natalie over the threshold of their bedroom. He set her down gently and cupped her face in his hands. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Natalie said. "When you found me crying that day, I thought my life was over. I thought I had made the worst mistake imaginable. But it brought me here to you. So maybe it was not a mistake after all. Maybe it was fate." "I do not know about fate," Vincent said. "But I know that I am grateful every day that I heard you crying, that I stopped, that I got to be the one to dry your tears." "You did more than dry them," Natalie said, reaching up to kiss him. "You gave me a reason to never cry them again." Their first night as husband and wife was tender and sweet, full of whispered words and gentle touches. And when Natalie fell asleep in Vincent's arms, she felt truly safe for the first time since she had left Kansas City. The months that followed were not without challenges. Ranch life was hard work, and that first winter was difficult. Snow came early and heavy, and they lost some cattle to the cold. Money was tight, and there were nights when Natalie worried about how they would make it through. But Vincent was a good rancher and a smart businessman. He worked longer hours, took on extra jobs when he could, and slowly they began to turn a profit again. Natalie managed the household accounts, proving herself adept with numbers. She started a side business selling her baking in Tascosa, and the extra income helped. Victor courted and married a girl from town named Sarah, a sweet-natured woman with a good head on her shoulders. They built a small house on the far side of the ranch, giving them privacy while keeping the family close. Sarah and Natalie became fast friends, and it was good to have another woman nearby. In the spring of 1880, Natalie discovered she was pregnant. She told Vincent one evening after supper, nervous about his reaction. They had not talked much about children, too focused on keeping the ranch afloat. But Vincent's face lit up with joy. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with delight. "We are going to have a baby," he said wonderingly. "A child, our child. You are happy?" Natalie asked. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Vincent said. "You have made me the luckiest man in Texas." The pregnancy was not easy. Natalie was sick for the first few months, barely able to keep anything down. But Vincent was patient and caring, holding her hair back when she was ill, making sure she rested, bringing her whatever she could stomach eating. As her belly grew, Vincent became even more protective. He would not let her lift anything heavy or work too hard. Natalie found it both endearing and exasperating. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she told him one day when he tried to stop her from hanging laundry. "I know," Vincent said. "But you are carrying the most precious thing in the world, and I am going to take care of both of you whether you like it or not." Their son was born on a cold November night. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Vincent feared he might lose her. But Natalie was strong, and with Sarah and the midwife helping, she brought their child into the world. Vincent held his son for the first time with tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Natalie, he is perfect." They named him Benjamin Thomas Crawford, after Vincent's father and, surprisingly to Vincent, Thomas. "Not after Brennan," Natalie clarified when Vincent questioned it. "After my father. His name was Thomas too. I want our son to carry both our father's names." Benjamin was a healthy, happy baby with his mother's eyes and his father's dark hair. Vincent was utterly besotted, spending every free moment holding his son or watching him sleep. Natalie would often wake in the night to find Vincent standing over the cradle, just looking at Benjamin with wonder on his face. "I never knew I could love anything this much," Vincent told her one night. "Except you." Life settled into a new rhythm. The ranch continued to thrive. Victor and Sarah had their first child, a daughter they named Emma. The cousins were born only 6 months apart, and Natalie loved imagining them growing up together. Years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Benjamin grew into a bright, curious boy who followed his father everywhere. Natalie had 2 more children, a daughter named Rose and another son named James. The house that had once been too quiet was now filled with laughter and noise and life. Vincent and Natalie celebrated their 10th anniversary in 1889. They left the children with Victor and Sarah and rode out to the spot where Vincent had first told her he loved her. The ranch was larger now, more prosperous. They had hired hands to help with the work, and the herds had grown. "You ever regret it?" Natalie asked as they watched the sunset. Taking in a crying woman by the side of the road, Vincent pulled her close. "Never once. That was the best decision I ever made. You gave me everything, Natalie. A home, a family, a reason to wake up happy every morning. You took a lonely cowboy and made him the richest man alive." "I was so broken when you found me," Natalie said. "I did not think I would ever be whole again, but you put me back together, piece by piece. You showed me what love really means." "We put each other back together," Vincent said. "That is what love does. It heals." They kissed as the sun set, still as much in love as the day they married. And when they rode back to the ranch, to their children and their life, Natalie felt grateful for every moment that had led her here. For the broken wagon wheel, for Thomas Brennan's betrayal, for the tears that had brought Vincent to her side. Because all of it, every painful step had brought her home. The children grew. Benjamin became a fine rancher, learning everything from his father. Rose was spirited and strong-willed, reminding Vincent of her mother. James was gentle and thoughtful, preferring books to cattle but loving the ranch nonetheless. Vincent and Natalie grew older together, their hair turning gray, their bodies wearing the marks of hard work and full lives. But they never stopped holding hands. They never stopped finding excuses to steal kisses. They never stopped choosing each other, day after day, year after year. On their 25th anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Benjamin had married and had 3 children of his own. Rose had married a schoolteacher and lived in town. James was studying law in Austin but came home for the occasion. Victor and Sarah were there too, with their children and grandchildren. As Vincent looked around at the family they had built, the life they had created, he felt overwhelmed with gratitude. He found Natalie in the crowd and pulled her aside. "What is it?" she asked, seeing the emotion on his face. "I was just thinking," Vincent said, his voice rough. "About that day I found you crying, about how lost you looked, and I was thinking about all of this." He gestured to their family. "And I realized that every good thing in my life started the moment I decided to stop and help you." Natalie's eyes filled with tears. "Vincent Crawford, after 25 years, you can still make me cry." "Your tears are mine to dry now," Vincent said, echoing the words he had said so long ago. He pulled out his handkerchief, the same one he had given her that first day, worn soft from years of washing but carefully preserved. Natalie laughed through her tears. "You kept it." "Of course I kept it," Vincent said. "It was the handkerchief that changed my life." They stood together, watching their family, and felt the rightness of it all. The circle had come complete. From tears to joy, from loneliness to love, from broken to whole. Years continued to pass. Vincent and Natalie remained active on the ranch well into their 60s, though they gradually turned more responsibility over to Benjamin. They became the patriarch and matriarch of a sprawling family, beloved by children and grandchildren and, eventually, great-grandchildren. They took long walks in the evening, just as they always had, talking about everything and nothing. They still rode out to their special spot to watch the sunset. They still found joy in the simple things: a good meal shared, a quiet moment on the porch, the sound of family laughter filling the house. When Vincent was 70, he fell ill. It was not sudden or dramatic, just a slow wearing down, his body finally showing the effects of a lifetime of hard work. Natalie nursed him with fierce devotion, refusing to leave his side. "You are supposed to let me take care of you," Vincent said weakly from his bed. "That was the deal." "The deal was that we take care of each other," Natalie corrected, smoothing his hair back. "And I am not done taking care of you yet." But they both knew the end was coming. On a warm spring evening, with Natalie holding his hand and their children gathered around, Vincent took his last breath. His final words were, "I love you," directed at Natalie with all the devotion of their years together. Natalie mourned him deeply, as did everyone who had known him. He was buried on the ranch he had loved in a spot overlooking the plains, but Natalie did not fall apart. She had learned long ago that she was stronger than she thought. She lived another 10 years, surrounded by family, watching her great-grandchildren grow. She told them stories about their grandfather, about the kind cowboy who had found her crying and changed her life. She taught them about love and kindness, and the importance of helping those in need. When Natalie died at the age of 82, it was peacefully in her sleep. She was buried next to Vincent, and their headstones sat side by side, marking the resting place of two people who had found each other when they needed it most and built a love that lasted a lifetime. Their descendants continued to work the Crawford Ranch for generations. The house was kept up and cherished, and the story of Vincent and Natalie was passed down like a treasured heirloom. How he found her crying by a broken wagon, how he took her in and gave her a home, how they fell in love and built a life together against all odds. It became a family legend, a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us to the best. That kindness matters, that love heals, that tears can water the seeds of joy if we let them. And on summer evenings, when the sun sets over the Texas plains in shades of orange and gold, some say you can still see two figures standing together on the rise, watching the sunset hand in hand. Vincent and Natalie, together still, their love as enduring as the land itself. The broken wagon that had started it all was eventually salvaged by Victor, who could never bring himself to burn it. He repaired it and kept it in the barn, and it became another piece of the family story. Benjamin's children played in it as youngsters, pretending to be pioneers heading west. Rose's grandchildren had their picture taken sitting in it on special occasions. It stood as a reminder of beginnings, of how something broken can lead to something beautiful. Because Natalie's broken wagon wheel had not been a tragedy. It had been a crossroads, a moment when fate intervened, a gift wrapped in tears and dust and desperation. And Vincent's decision to stop, to help, to care, had been the best decision he ever made. It had given him love and family and a lifetime of happiness. It had turned a lonely cowboy into a beloved husband and father. It had taken two broken people and made them whole. Their love story became the kind that people told around fires and dinner tables. The kind that made people believe in fate and kindness and the possibility of second chances. The kind that reminded everyone that sometimes, when you are at your lowest, the best thing that could happen is right around the corner. Because Vincent did not just dry Natalie's tears that day by the broken wagon. He gave her a reason to smile again. He gave her hope when she had none. He gave her love when she thought she was unlovable. He gave her a home when she was lost, and she gave him everything in return. A purpose, a family, a joy he had never imagined possible. She turned his house into a home. She filled his life with laughter and love and meaning. She made every day worth living. Together, they proved that love does not always come easy or simple. Sometimes it comes wrapped in pain and tears and broken dreams. But if you are brave enough to reach for it, to trust it, to believe in it, it can transform everything. Vincent and Natalie's love had been like that. Born from tears, but growing into something strong and beautiful and lasting. A love that weathered storms and hardships and the simple challenges of daily life. A love that grew deeper with every passing year, every shared joy, every overcome obstacle. They had not had a perfect life. There had been struggles and sorrows, losses and disappointments. But through it all, they had each other. And that had made all the difference. On the anniversary of Natalie's death, the family gathered at the ranch as they did every year. They told stories and shared memories, keeping Vincent and Natalie alive in their hearts. The youngest great-great-grandchildren listened wide-eyed to tales of the cowboy who found a crying woman and married her, building a legacy that touched them all. As the sun set on another anniversary gathering, Benjamin's oldest grandson, who now ran the ranch, stood at the family graves with his own young daughter. She was 6 years old, named Natalie after her great-great-grandmother, with the same storm-gray eyes. "Tell me the story again, Papa," little Natalie said. "About how great-great-grandpa found great-great-grandma." And so he told it, the way it had been told to him, and the way it would be told to his grandchildren someday. About the broken wagon and the tears and the simple kindness that changed everything. About love found in the most unlikely of circumstances. About two people who saved each other. When he finished, little Natalie was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she asked, "Did they live happily ever after?" Her father smiled and looked at the two headstones, side by side, marked with names and dates and a simple inscription, "Together always." "Yes, sweet girl," he said. "They most certainly did, and because of them so do we," and that was the truth. Vincent and Natalie's love had rippled out through generations, creating a family built on the values they had lived by. Kindness, compassion, hard work, loyalty, love that endured through anything. The ranch they had built together continued to thrive. The family they had created continued to grow. And the love story that had started with tears and a whispered promise continued to inspire everyone who heard it. Because sometimes, the best love stories are not the easy ones. They are the ones born from pain and tears, from rock bottom and desperate moments. They are the ones where someone reaches out a hand and says, "I will help you. Your burden is mine now. Your tears are mine to dry." And in that moment, everything changes. Two lives intersect and become one. Two broken hearts find healing in each other. Two lost souls find home. That was what Vincent had given Natalie that day by the broken wagon. Not just help, but hope. Not just assistance, but love. Not just a dry handkerchief, but a future bright with promise. And Natalie had given him the same in return, though it took her time to realize it. She had given meaning to his lonely existence. She had filled his empty house with warmth. She had shown him that his capacity for love was far greater than he had ever imagined. Together, they had created something beautiful. Not perfect, but real and lasting and true. A love that served as the foundation for generations of family. A partnership that proved two people are always stronger together than apart. As the stars came out over the Crawford ranch that night, as they had for over 100 years, the family made their way back to the house. They gathered around the long dining table, descendants of Vincent and Natalie filling every chair, spilling out onto the porch and into the yard. They ate and laughed and shared stories, connected by blood and history and love. The house rang with the sound of family, just as it had when Vincent and Natalie were alive. And somehow, in the warmth and the laughter and the love, they were still present. Not as ghosts, but as the foundation everything else was built upon. Their story continued in every child who learned to be kind, in every person who stopped to help someone in need, in every couple who chose love over fear, commitment over convenience, each other over everything else. Vincent and Natalie's legacy was not just the ranch or the family or the material things they left behind. It was the example they set. The proof that love, real love, the kind that lasts, is worth fighting for, worth believing in, worth everything. And it all started with tears, a broken wagon wheel and a cowboy who chose to stop, who chose to care, who chose to whisper the words that would change two lives forever. "Your tears are mine to dry now." Such simple words, such a profound promise. And in keeping that promise, Vincent Crawford had not just dried Natalie's tears. He had given her a lifetime of reasons to smile. And that, in the end, was the greatest love story of all. Not the fairy tale kind with princes and castles, but the real kind, built on ordinary moments and extraordinary commitment. The kind where two imperfect people create something perfect together. The kind that lasts. The kind that Vincent and Natalie had lived. The kind that their family would carry forward, generation after generation, as long as the Crawford Ranch stood on the Texas plains. The kind of love that never really ends, because it lives on in the hearts of everyone it touches. And as the moon rose high over the ranch that night, casting silver light across the land Vincent and Natalie had loved, their story continued. Not as an ending, but as a beginning that never stopped beginning. A love that never stopped loving. A legacy that never stopped growing. Because that is what real love does. It endures. It continues. It multiplies and spreads and touches everything it reaches. Vincent found Natalie crying alone that day in 1878, and he dried her tears just as he promised. But more than that, he gave her a life full of laughter and joy and love so deep it could never be measured. And when their earthly journey ended, they left behind proof that love, true love, is the most powerful force in the universe. It heals wounds, builds families, creates legacies, and changes the world, one heart at a time. That was Vincent and Natalie's gift to their descendants. That was the story that would be told forever in the Crawford family. And that was the truth that continued to guide them all. Love matters. Kindness matters. Stopping to help someone in need matters. because you never know when that moment might change not just one life, but generations of lives to come. And so the story ends where it began, with tears and compassion and a promise kept. With a cowboy who stopped, and a woman who wept, and a love that conquered all. With Vincent and Natalie together always, their story complete and yet never truly ending, living on in memory and blood and the enduring legacy of a love that was, in every way that mattered, eternal.